Once upon a time, when dreams and daylight still danced side by side, there was a peaceful kingdom where the stars seemed to lean a little closer and the winds always carried the scent of wild blossoms. In the heart of this quiet realm stood a majestic castle surrounded by tranquil lakes and meadows that rolled like waves of silk dot. In the king's royal garden grew a most wondrous tree, not large or tall, but ancient and noble. Its twisted branches bore apples that shimmered with the brilliance of gold. They were said to carry blessings, dreams that could come true, and peace that lasted a lifetime. But something strange had begun to happen. Each morning, as the sky blushed with the early hues of dawn, the gardeners would discover that one of the golden apples was gone. Not fallen, not plucked by hand, simply vanished, as if the night itself had reached down and taken it. The king grew curious, then troubled. Who or what was stealing his most magical fruit? So he called upon his 3 sons. "My children," he said gently, "you are the light of my heart. But now I need your courage and your watchful eyes. Each of you will take a turn guarding the golden tree. Perhaps then we shall uncover the secret of the stolen apples." The eldest son, brave and proud, took the first night's watch. He sharpened his sword, stood tall beneath the golden canopy, and promised not to sleep. But the night was soft and comforting. The crickets sang lullabies. The moon cast silver nets across the grass. And soon, despite his best efforts, he drifted into dreams. When morning came, another apple was gone. The second son, clever and strong, took the next watch. He drank black tea and marched in circles to stay awake. But the stars blinked gently above him. The leaves whispered kind things. The garden's hush wrapped around him like a blanket. He too fell asleep, and the golden fruit vanished once. More than came the youngest sons turned the quiet one, gentle of heart and often overlooked. But his spirit was bright, and his eyes were kind. He took no sword, only a small lamp and a warm cloak. He sat beneath the glowing tree and listened, truly listened, to the rustling of the branches, to the hush of wings above, to the breath of the earth. And just past midnight, he saw it, a flutter of light, a glint of sun where there should have been none. There, gliding through the shadows, came the golden bird. It moved without a sound, feathers gleaming like polished lanterns, eyes wise and ancient. It perched on the tree, tilted its shining head, plucked a golden apple with its beak. But before it could take flight again, the young prince leapt from his place, not to harm it, but to reach for truth. The bird escaped into the night, but not without leaving behind a single glowing feather. The prince held the feather carefully, marveling at its warmth and brilliance when he presented it to the king. The old man's eyes widened. "This," he whispered, "is no ordinary bird. It is one of legend, the golden bird of Evernight. Key, it brings blessings to those who earn its trust." And so began a journey, not of gold or power, but of kindness, of riddles and rivers, a forest that spoke and lanterns that led the way, and above all, of the search for something far more precious than an apple. A journey for wonder. The journey begins the next morning. Sunlight poured through the castle windows like honey. Birds sang soft songs in the courtyards, and the scent of roses lingered on the breeze. Yet inside the hall, a quiet determination had settled over the king and his sons. The youngest prince, still holding the golden feather, stood before his father. "I wish to find the golden bird," he said. His voice was calm like a still pond. "Not for glory, but because I believe it's calling." The king hesitated, love and worry flickering in his eyes. But he saw the quiet fire in his son's heart. "Then go," he said gently, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Follow your heart, but be wary. Not all things golden are good, and not all paths lead where we expect." And so the young prince set out. He wore a simple cloak, carried a small satchel of bread and cheese, and tucked the feather safely inside his coat. The forest beyond the castle walls was quiet, but not empty. Light dripped through the leaves like melted silver, and the air smelled of moss and memory. He walked for hours, then days. The world grew softer, dreamlike. Time lost its grip. At twilight on the third day, he reached a crossroads. There stood an old stone marker, cracked with age. It had no words, only 3 arrows carved into its surface, one pointing left, one right, and one straight ahead. As he pondered which path to choose, a fox appeared, its fur russet and eyes wise. "Good evening," said the fox, sitting neatly on its tail. "Where is it you wish to go?" "To find the golden bird," the prince replied, surprised but unafraid. The fox's ears twitched. "Ah, many have chased the bird, few have listened to it. Can you guide me?" the prince asked. "I can," said the fox, "but only if you promise one thing. Trust what feels true, even when it is strange." The prince nodded. "Then follow me," the fox said, and turned down the path to the right, the one overgrown with ivy and moonflowers, and the prince followed. Deeper into the quiet woods, where stories slept and waited to be remembered. Asterix, the end of Whisper's night, fell slowly, the stars rising one by one like lanterns in the trees. Eventually, the fox led the prince to a small inn nestled between 2 hills. Its windows glowed with warm amber light, and the sign above the door swayed gently in the wind. "The Inn of Whispers inside." The innkeeper, a kind woman with silver hair and eyes that knew more than they said, offered him a room and a bowl of soup. "You're not the first to seek the golden bird," she said softly as she stirred the pot, "but most chase it for its shine, not for its song." "I just want to understand," said the prince, his voice tired but sincere. That night, he dreamed of feathers falling like snow, of a tree made of starlight, and of the bird singing not in words, but in memories. In the morning, he awoke to find a small note under his door. "The path continues west. Trust the quiet." Quas was waiting. Without a word, they continued their journey. Asterisk, the sleeping meadow beyond the inn, the world grew stiller. The trees thinned into wide open fields, where soft grass bent like waves under the sky. A gentle breeze hummed a lullaby, and wildflowers blinked lazily in the sun. The fox padded ahead without haste, and the prince followed, his steps light. In the heart of the field lay a meadow so quiet, even the birds dared not sing. The prince paused. "What is this place?" he whispered. "The sleeping meadow," said the fox. "It remembers the dreams of those who pass through. But beware, if your heart holds restlessness, the meadow may put you to sleep." They walked carefully. Prince thought peaceful thoughts of his father's garden, the warmth of soup, the shimmer of the feather. Suddenly, a song drifted through the air, soft and wordless. The prince turned toward the sound. A golden glimmer hovered above the flowers. The bird, watching him from afar, it didn't flee, simply waited. But just as he stepped forward, the meadow pulled at his eyes. Sleep whispered like mist. "Don't stop," said the fox, nudging his leg. "Keep walking. Not all beauty must be chased." So the prince bowed gently toward the glowing bird and continued on. And just before the bird vanished into the horizon, he let fall a single golden feather. This one lighter, almost translucent, like a sigh. Asterisk, the bridge of echoes the meadow led to a winding stream, and across it stood a bridge made of white stone in silence. The fox halted at its edge. "This bridge," he said, "does not test your strength. It listens to your heart." The prince stepped forward. As his foot touched the stone, a soft voice, his own voice, echoed in the air. "I am searching, not for treasure, but for understanding." The bridge responded with music, like distant wind chimes, ringing softly through the mist. Each step he took, the bridge echoed memories, his mother's laughter when he was small, the way the wind smelled after the first snow, the hush of the castle halls at night. At the center of the bridge, he paused. The river below shimmered like a mirror, reflecting not his face, but a moment in night he saw the golden bird. For the first time, the look in its eyes, the wisdom in its wings. "I don't want to capture you," he whispered, "only to understand why you come, okay?" Soft breeze lifted around him, warm and full of light. The bridge hummed approval, and the final stones carried him to the other side. The fox smiled. "You're further than most have ever gone." The lantern tree that night. They reached the edge of a peculiar forest where the trees bore no leaves, only glowing lanterns. Each lantern swayed gently, casting soft gold and blue light in circles on the forest floor. "This is the forest of waiting," said the fox. "Every lantern is a choice someone once made or didn't make." The prince walked slowly, lanterns dancing above him like floating stars. Some flickered, some were steady. Others went dark as he passed. At the center of the forest stood a tall tree, taller than any he'd seen, and in its highest lantern burned a flame of pure gold. "The golden bird nested here once," whispered the fox, "before it flew beyond stories." The prince sat beneath the tree and looked up, and for the first time he did not wish to climb. He did not wish to reach. He simply closed his eyes and listened. In the hush of the lanterns, a new sound emerged, a heartbeat, not his, not the fox's, but the bird's single quotes, slow, rhythmic, peaceful, and as he listened, felt the golden feather in his coat warm softly. The bird was near, but not yet ready. The river that remembers by morning. The lantern forest had faded behind him. In its place flowed a gentle river, broad and shimmering like polished glass. The fox stopped at the bank. "This is the river that remembers," he said softly. "It carries not water, but memory." A small wooden boat bobbed gently by the shore. No oars, no sail. The prince stepped inside, and the fox leapt in after him. Without a word, the river pulled them forward, silently, smoothly, as they drifted. The prince saw scenes rise from the water's surface, clear as dreams. There was his childhood garden, blooming with tulips and sun showers. Then his older brother, once gentle, now lost in pride. His father, watching the horizon from the highest tower. And then the golden bird, flying not in fear, but in sorrow. "Why does it look sad?" the prince asked quietly. "Because most do not seek it to understand," the fox replied, "only to possess." The prince placed his hand in the water. It was cool, but not cold, like touching a long-forgotten lullaby. "I don't want to chase it anymore," he said. "I just want to listen." And at that moment, the current slowed, and a new path appeared, a hidden inlet glowing with silver fog. The boat turned gently, as if in agreement. The island of forgotten sounds. The inlet opened into a small island, round and quiet, blanketed in soft moss and ancient trees. Here, there were no birds, no rustling leaves, no wind, only stillness. "This," whispered the fox, "is where forgotten sounds sleep." The prince knelt beside a smooth stone and pressed his ear to it. He heard a sound, faint but pure, a child's first laugh. Another stone held the hush of falling snow. Another, the creak of his grandmother's rocking chair. He wandered through the island, collecting soft echoes in his heart. At the center of the island stood a broken fountain, perched silently on its rim. The golden bird. It turned its head, watching him, not startled, not fleeing. The prince did not move closer. He only sat on the moss and listened. And in that sacred quiet, the bird opened its wings and sang. The song was not loud. It was not meant to impress. It was a whisper of memory, of stillness, of sorrow and joy held in balance. Tears rolled down the prince's cheeks, not from sadness, but from peace. The fox sat beside him. Now you've truly heard it. Asterisk, the feather of understanding, the golden bird, still perched on the fountain, reached beneath its wing and drew forth a third feather, unlike any before. This one shimmered with a gentle glow, not gold, but the color of moonlight through clouds. It drifted down, landing in the prince's palm. "What does it mean?" he asked. The bird tilted its head, then flew upward in a slow circle, singing once more before vanishing into the sky. The fox spoke. "It is the feather of understanding. Few ever receive it. Fewer still know what to do with it." The prince looked at the feather. It felt warm, but weightless. "I'll return home," he said. "Not with the bird, but with its gift." And the fox nodded. That was always the true path. Together, they walked back to the river, the forest, the fields, each place more familiar now, each more beautiful in its simplicity. By the time they reached the kingdom, dawn was breaking. The prince's journey had lasted weeks, yet it felt like a single deep breath, and he held the feather close, not as a prize, but as a promise. Asterisk, the return to silence them. Prince walked slowly through the castle gates. The guards blinked in surprise. They had long thought him lost, but no fanfare greeted him, no horns or cheers, soft morning light and the distant sound of waking birds. Inside the castle, the halls were quieter than he remembered. His father sat on the throne, older somehow, not in body, but in spirit. "You returned," the king said, not rising. The prince nodded. "I did not bring the golden bird, but I bring something greater." He stepped forward and opened his palm to reveal the moon feather. The king leaned forward. "What is this?" "Gift," the prince said softly, "not of treasure, but of truth." And for a moment, silence wrapped the room, a warm silence, like the hush before snowfall. The feather pulsed gently, its light spread, not bright, but calm. And the king, so often stern, so often tired, closed his eyes and breathed. Asterisk, A garden reborn in the days that followed. The prince did not return to glory or conquest. He spent his time in the garden, the one he loved as a child. Now wild with vines and thyme, he trimmed it slowly, gently, petal by petal, root by root. He planted new seeds, not exotic ones, but familiar ones. Lavender, daisies, simple herbs. He placed the moon feather on a small pedestal near the fountain. And every evening, it shimmered as the sun fell. Visitors came from nearby villages, not to ask about the bird, but to sit in the garden, to listen to its stillness. Children said they could hear soft music when the wind blew. Elders said their sleep came easier here. The garden became a sanctuary, not of power, but of peace. Asterisk, the final flight one night, as silver clouds drifted across a quiet sky. The prince sat alone beneath the moonlight. The garden hummed with summer air. The feather glowed faintly. Then, from the darkness above, came a single sound, a song, familiar, deep, endless. He looked up. The golden bird was circling above the garden, wings wide, glowing softly. It did not land. It did not sing loudly. It simply flew once in a wide, slow arc and disappeared beyond the stars. The prince smiled. He knew now, some things are not meant to be captured. Some dreams are not meant to be held. They are meant to be understood. And so, with the moonlight wrapping the garden like a blanket, the prince closed his eyes, and the night held him like a story finishing its final page. Asterisk, a kingdom that learned to listen the next morning. Something had changed. Not loudly, not suddenly, but gently, like a leaf turning on the breeze. The people of the kingdom awoke, feeling lighter, as if a great weight had been lifted, though no one could say what it was. Merchants began to smile a little more. Farmers hummed as they worked. Children played longer before being called in for supper, and the prince, no longer chasing legends, simply walked among them. He listened to their stories, helped with small things, planted trees. When asked about the golden bird, he would smile softly and say, "It's still flying. But now, I hear it without chasing." And the people began to understand the feathers light as years passed. The moon feather remained on its pedestal in the garden. It never dimmed. Each evening, it gave off a soft glow that changed with the seasons. In spring, it was the color of dew. In summer, warm honey. In autumn, copper. In winter, silver frost. Some said the feather whispered at night, not in words, but in feeling. A feeling of forgiveness, of letting go. Travelers came from distant lands, not to claim the feather, but to sit near it in silence. And always, they left with a little more peace than they came with. The prince grew older, but never weary. He walked slower, spoke softer, and smiled deeper. He never forgot the river, the fox, the forest, or the island of forgotten sounds. They had shaped him, not into a hero, but into a listener. The sleep of the forest one winter night, when snow drifted like feathers across the castle roofs. The prince, now gray at the temples, stepped into his garden one last time. The moon was full. The air was still. He sat beside the feather, just as he had years ago, not with longing, not with sorrow, just with stillness. The trees around him whispered, as if remembering. Somewhere, an owl called, low and comforting. The prince looked to the sky and whispered, "Thank you." And, as if answering, a single golden feather, not moonlight, starlight, drifted from the heavens. It touched his shoulder and vanished. The prince leaned his back, closed his eyes, and drifted into a sleep deeper than rest, the kind that dreams are born from. And far, far away, beyond the clouds and beyond time, the golden bird sang once more. A kingdom wrapped in dreams. After the prince's final evening in the garden, something shifted again, but this time, in the hearts of the people. They began to speak softer, linger longer in conversations, and share stories by candlelight. It was as if the entire kingdom had taken a deep breath and decided never to rush it out. The market still bustled. The bells still chimed, but beneath it all was a hush, a stillness that made every moment feel like morning. Even those who had never met the prince felt his peace, because his story, the one of the golden bird, had become more than a tale. It had become a way of seeing the world. Echoes in the trees, the ancient woods where the prince once met the fox. Trees stood taller than ever. Children walked their paths and swore. They heard whispers in the wind, not eerie, but kind. Sometimes they found feathers lying on mossy stones, not golden, not glowing, but soft and real, as if left behind as a reminder. And when the children brought them home, thought dreams that night were gentle and bright. The forest had not forgotten, nor had it been forgotten, because what had once been feared was now understood. The starless sky one evening. Many years later, the skies clouded over. No stars, no moon. The people waited, worried. Would the garden dim? Would the feather fade? Would the moon feather held its glow brighter than ever, casting soft light over the snow-covered petals, the stone paths, and the quiet benches? An old gardener, tending the last of the herbs, smiled to herself. "Stars don't only live in the sky," she whispered, and she was right, because in every kind act, every listening ear, and every moment of stillness, a bit of starlight had found a new home. The book without end, the castle library. dusty scrolls sat untouched for years until a child wandered in one rainy day. He found an old book with a feather pressed between its pages. No title, no cover, just stories. He opened it and began to read. And what he found wasn't just the tale of the golden bird, but all the quiet things the prince had seen and felt along the way. Moments too soft for memory, but too real to forget. And though the book had no final page, the child didn't mind. He simply closed it, teared, and sat by the window, imagining a bird with wings like dawn. Asterisk, when the golden bird returns, they say that every 100 years, so on the quietest night of winter, the golden bird returns, not to be caught, not to be seen, but simply to sing. And those who are still enough, calm enough, kind enough, cared enough, they hear it. A lullaby wrapped in wind, a promise held in moonlight, a song without words that says, "You are enough. You are home. Rest now." And so, as you lie beneath your own sky tonight, know this: the golden bird still flies, still sings, still watches over dreamers just like you. The journey begins. Hans had worked 7 long years with quiet hands and a loyal heart. And now it was time to return home to the warm kitchen where his mother waited, Kay, in the gentle hills of his childhood. His master, pleased with Hans's honesty, placed a lump of silver in his hands, so large it filled his whole cloth. Hans thanked him, tucked the silver into a scarf, and slung it over his shoulder. The road home stretched ahead, soft and winding beneath a golden sky. Hans smiled. His heart was light, even if his shoulders were not. Asterisk, the horse and the smiles. Hans walked, okay? A man rode past on a glossy horse, swaying gently like a lullaby in motion. Hans watched, dreamy-eyed. "How easy it must be to ride," he said aloud, "like floating on a cloud." The rider heard him and pulled the reins. "I'll trade you," he said, "your heavy silver for my horse." Hans paused, then grinned. "Deal with that." The silver was gone, and Hans climbed onto the saddle, back straight, his heart full. He whispered to himself, "What a fine start to my lucky day." Asterisk, a tumble and a cow. A horse trotted proudly, then faster, and too fast. Hans cried out, "Jip," as he had been told, and the horse galloped like thunder in a blink. Hans was thrown to the ground, muddy and bruised, but smiling weakly. A shepherd passed with a quiet cow. Hans waved and said, "That cow of yours seems kind. She's gentle and gives milk," said the shepherd. "Trade you." Hans looked at his torn coat and sore elbow, then at the cow's sleepy eyes. "Yes, I'd like that very much." Asterisk, milk and morning light with the sun now high. Hans led the cow gently across the fields. He imagined the milk he'd pour, the cheese he'd share with his mother. His heart felt full like the morning sky itself. He paused beneath a tree, tied the cow, and reached for his cup, but no milk came. He tried again, unsure, still nothing. Then dash thump. The cow kicked, and Hans tumbled back, dizzy from the blow. He lay there for a while, listening to the birds, blinking at the branches, and when he sat up, he laughed softly. "Well, perhaps she's just shy." Asterisk, the butcher and the pig butcher strolled by, pushing a plump pig in a cart. He offered Hans a drink and listened kindly. "That cow," the butcher said gently, "is past her milking days." Hans looked at the pig, snorted sleepily, its ears flicking like paper fans. "I'll trade," the butcher said, "my pig for your cow." Hans hesitated, then smiled. Another trade, another turn, maybe another bit of luck. As the pig walked beside him on a leash, Hans chuckled. "This one doesn't kick." Asterisk, the pig and the stranger. Hans strolled along with the pig, imagining a warm fire and the scent of roasting apples at his mother's home. He stopped to rest beside a pond where ducks swam slowly, gliding like dreams. A man in a long coat approached, eyes kind and voice smooth. "That pig," he said softly, "was stolen this morning." "People might think you're the thief." Hans blinked. "But I traded for him." "Ah, but who would believe that?" The man said gently. "Tell you what, I have a goose." No one questions a goose. Hans looked at the goose.com, white-feathered, humming a low coo. He sighed, traded once more. Asterisk, the goose and the globe. The goose walked beside Hans, its little feet patting like soft raindrops on the road. "Mother will love her," Hans murmured. "She's beautiful." The bird made no fuss, only blinked slowly and nestled closer. A soft wind blew, warm and whispering. Hans imagined the goose under a blanket beside the hearth, and for a moment, everything felt right. He reached a village where laughter and chimney smoke filled the air. It smelled of bread and rest and home. Asterisk, the scissors and the song near the village gate. Hans met a tinker, a man who sharpened blades and sang gentle songs as he worked. "Fine goose you have," the tinker said, eyeing her wings. "But what does she give you?" Hans shrugged. "She's soft and quiet." "I've got something better, a grindstone and fine scissors. With them, you'll always earn your way." "Trade?" Hans paused, touching the smooth, cool metal. Imagined fixing things, helping neighbors, shining blades under sunlight. He nodded. "Yes, let's trade." The tinker whistled and rolled away with the goose, and Hans, now holding the tools, smiled again. Asterisk, a pebble's lesson. The road grew dusty. Hans's arms ached from carrying the heavy stone. His smile wavered, just a little. He sat beside a well, the afternoon light golden on the grass. As he bent to drink, the stone slipped from his hand and sank with a soft plunk into the water. Hans stared for a moment, then straightened, and then he laughed. Not bitter, not broken dot, just light. "Now I'm free again," he whispered. "Nothing to carry, nothing to worry about." And with that, Hans began to walk once more, lighter than ever. Asterisk, home without burden. The trees grew familiar. The hills rose like old friends. Hans saw the smoke curling from his mother's chimney, smelled soup and thyme. He knocked gently. She opened the door, and without a silver coin or a cow or a goose, Hans stepped into her embrace. "Mother," said, "I've had the best of luck." She looked at his worn shoes, his empty hands, and his bright, open smile, and she believed him. Asterisk, a bowl of soup that night. Hans sat by the fire, cradling a bowl of warm carrot soup. The scent filled the room, soft and earthy. His mother hummed, as she stirred, the same song she sang when he was a child. "You brought no riches," she said kindly. "No," Hans replied, "but I brought myself." She smiled. "It's all I ever needed." Outside, the stars blinked gently, like old friends watching from afar. Asterisk, the morning peace. Hans awoke to birdsong and the creak of old floorboards. Sunlight pooled on the wooden floor like golden silk. He stretched. No stone to carry, no bargain to chase, only peace in the kitchen. His mother handed him bread, still warm from the oven. "You seem lighter," she said. "I am," Hans whispered. "I gave everything away, and somehow I got everything back." Asterisk, talking to trees later that day, Hans walked the wooded paths near the village. He ran his hand over bark, whispering old names to familiar trees. "You've grown," he said. To one. "Still here," he murmured to another. Each step felt like a return, like a memory waking. The wind rustled above, not rushing, just reminding. Everything he'd left behind was waiting and had been all along. Asterisk, the stranger's coin in the village square. Hans helped an old woman lift a heavy basket. She smiled and handed him a small coin. He almost refused, but then remembered the scissors, the stone, the silver, and how none of them stayed. He took it gently and bought a loaf of bread and a single apple. He shared both with a child sitting alone by the well, and his heart stayed full. Asterisk evening echoes. That evening, Hans sat on the porch beside his mother. The sky was painted in fading lavender and rose. "Do you miss the silver?" she asked softly. Hans watched the swallows dance in the dusk. "No," he said, "not the silver, not the horse, not even the goose." She nodded. He looked at her, older now, gentle lines framing her eyes. "I miss this," he said, "just this." And they sat side by side until the stars came quietly home. Asterisk, the quiet morning hands rose before the sun. Mist blanketed the fields like a dream still lingering. He carried a basket and wandered into the garden, gathering herbs, and soft berries dew had kissed each step. Each breath felt like poetry. There was no rush, no burden, no hurry to be elsewhere. The world, as it was, felt enough. He smiled without reason. Asterisk, a visit to the meadow hands wandered to a quiet meadow where cows grazed and wildflowers swayed. He lay back in the tall grass, watching clouds drift like lazy thoughts. He remembered the horse, the cow, the pig, the goose, and how each seemed so important at the time. But lying in the hush of nature, he saw the real trade. He had given up weight and gained wonder. Asterisk, the festival bell that weekend. The village bell rang for the harvest fair. Hans helped decorate the stalls, tying sunflowers and lanterns to wooden beams. Children danced, musicians played soft flutes. Laughter echoed between the homes. One girl asked Hans to tell a story, so he did. Not about treasure or dragons, but about a boy who traded everything and found joy in an empty pocket. And the crowd listened, gently smiling. Asterisk, the gift of nothing. A merchant offered Hans a shiny coin for helping load his cart. Hans shook his head. "No need," he said. "I have what I need." "But I gave you nothing," the man protested. Hans smiled, "And I am grateful for it." And he meant it, because sometimes the best gift is not having to carry more. Asterisk, the luck that stayed years past. Hans still walked the same road, sometimes with bread, sometimes with berries, sometimes with just a hum on his lips. People would ask, "Hans, do you still think you are lucky?" He would always nod. "Yes," he'd say. "The day I gave it all away was the day I got my life back." And as twilight settled, as dreams gently whispered through the trees, Hans would sit by his little window and smile at the stars. The whispering forest long ago, hidden deep within a sleepy, sighing forest, there stood an ancient castle. Time had forgotten this place, and so had people. But the trees remembered. They whispered of the castle's mysteries whenever the wind stirred their boughs. Moss clung to its weathered stones, and ivy curled around crumbling windows. And within the silent castle lived a fairy enchantress, whose power was woven into every route and shadow. This fairy was not the kind you read about in joyful tales. No, she was old, secretive, and strange. By day, she wandered through the forest like a gray-furred cat, eyes gleaming from the underbrush. Or she flew like an owl, silent and watchful, gliding between the treetops. But as night fell, she returned to her castle, always becoming the old woman again, frail, yet powerful, with sharp eyes and a knowing smile. Her magic bound the land around her. No man who came within 100 paces of her dwelling could move another step. He would be trapped, frozen like a statue, until she came and freed him if she wished. But the women, the women, they met a different fate. Every young maiden who crossed that unseen line turned into a bird. Not just any bird, but a delicate, beautiful creature. Robin, a lark, a dove, a nightingale. These feathered souls were locked away in golden cages that hung from the ceilings of her tallest tower. 700 cages, 700 birds, all singing songs of sorrow and longing. Chapter 2. Beyond that forest. 8. In a peaceful meadow, cradled by low hills and bright skies, lived 2 young souls. Jorinda, a girl with laughter in her eyes and sunlight in her hair, and Jorindel, a gentle shepherd whose songs could hush even the wildest sheep. They were drawn to each other like the moon is drawn to the tide. They walked the fields hand in hand, whispered dreams under the starlit sky, and planned to marry when the autumn leaves began to fall. Jorinda loved the quiet moments, watching birds take flight at dawn or resting in the soft shade of birch trees. Jorindel, ever cautious, warned her gently, "Stay far from the forest. Beyond those trees lies the fairy spell." But youth is curious, and love makes the world seem safe. Into the forest one golden afternoon, they wandered farther than usual. The sunlight filtered through branches like threads of gold. Birds trilled above, and the air smelled of pine and wildflower. They lost track of time, wrapped in conversation and the simple joy of being together. The forest thickened as they walked. Leaves rustled overhead, and shadows lengthened. Jorindel noticed at first the sudden stillness. No birds sang. The wind had stilled. Even the leaves seemed to hold their breath. Jorinda sat beneath a tall tree, humming softly. The song was one she made up on the spot. "Willow weeps where dreams may stray. Sing me home by end of day." Her voice faded. The spell, cold breeze, touched their cheeks. Jorindel stood frozen. He could not move his feet. Panic rose in his chest. He turned his head slowly. Painfully, he saw Jorinda still seated. Then, before his eyes, she shimmered. Her form blurred, shimmered like water, and where she had been sat a nightingale. Its eyes held Jorinda's soul wide, frightened and full of song. An owl swooped from the trees. 3 times it circled them. 3 times it cried, "Tuhu, tuhu, tuhu." Then came the fairy. Her figure hunched, her face pale and sharp. She muttered to herself as she reached for the cage, placed the nightingale inside, disappeared into the trees. Jor, still frozen, could only weep inside his heart. The curse of Silence the fairy returned once more. Her voice rasped like wind over dry leaves, still as stone, bound by fate. Till the dawn, alone you wait. Then she vanished again. As twilight deepened into night, Jorindel was released. He fell to the ground, his knees weak, his heart heavier than stone. Jorinda was gone. Her voice, her laughter, all silenced. The wanderer's grief, Jorindel could not return home. Everything reminded him of her. Her voice in the wind, her steps in the grass, her smile in the stars. He wandered through towns and villages, forests and fields. He worked with sheep again, but his songs would no more dot each night. His dreams were filled with cages and birdsong. The dream of the flower one night, a dream came. A purple flower bloomed before him, radiant as moonlight. At its heart lay a pearl, glowing softly. The dream whispered, "This flower holds the key. Touch the cage, set her free." When he awoke, his heart beat with purpose for the first time in many moons. To search, he searched through thickets and marsh, over hill and cliff. For 9 days he searched. Rain soaked him, the sun burned, but still he walked. On the morning of the 9th day, he saw it. The purple flower, Ku, clung to its petals. K, at the center, a single drop glowed like pearl. He picked it gently and held it close. Returned to the castle. The forest welcomed him this time. No spell froze his steps. He walked up to the castle door. It opened when he touched it with the flower. Inside, bird song filled the air, soft, longing, layered in sorrow. He followed the sound to the tower chamber. 700 cages, 700 fluttering wings. Asterisk, asterisk, the final confrontation. Kay shrieked when she saw him. She lunged forward, but the flower glowed. She could not come near. He searched the cages, panic rising. Which bird was Jorinda? Then he saw the fairy was escaping with one golden cage. He rushed, touched it with the flower. The bird shimmered. Jorinda stood before him. Whole and radiant tears filled their eyes. Asterisk, the bird's lament, though Jorinda was safe. The tower still echoed with sorrowful songs. 700 birds fluttered behind bars. Each cage held a maiden, just like her. Jorinda stepped forward and laid a hand on one golden cage. "We must help them, Jorinda," she whispered. "We must free them all." He nodded. They began to move through the room together, Jorinda touching each cage with the flower. One by one, the birds shimmered, feathers giving way to arms and eyes and tears. Each girl remembered the song she had been singing when she was taken. Asterisk, the tower unbound, the last cage vanished. The air in the tower shifted. The golden light that had clung to the walls dimmed. The tower began to tremble, its ancient enchantments cracking like thin ice underfoot. The girls held one another, frightened, but Jorinda raised his voice in song, and the walls steadied. Jorinda joined him, her voice warm and soothing. Together, they sang the tower to sleep. Asterisk, the enchantress and the fairy stood beneath the broken dome, her power crumbling around her. "You think you've won?" she hissed, but Jorinda stepped forward and gently placed the flower into her hands. She blinked, and for the first time, her face softened. She turned into a raven and flew away, never to be seen again. Asterisk, the journey home the girls, now free, followed Jorinda and Jorinda through the forest. The trees no longer whispered warnings. Birds flew beside them. Path opened where none had been before. They emerged into the meadow at dawn, greeted by soft light and blooming petals. The world felt new. The village awakens word of their return spread quickly. The village bells rang, and families ran to embrace lost daughters. Some had been gone for years, not a day older. Fathers wept, mothers rejoiced. Songs were sung around every hearth. Then, night. Asterisk, the wedding under the birch trees. Autumn painted the trees gold. Jorinda and Jorinda were wed beneath the very birch tree where she had once sung. Birds gathered in the branches, watching as if offering blessings. Their vows were simple, but spoken with hearts that had crossed shadows together. Asterisk, a new towering time. Jorinda built a tower of his own, but not for cages. It was a sanctuary. Each room was filled with music, warmth, and light. Those who had once been birds often visited, leaving tokens of gratitude. No magic, but love filled its halls. Asterisk, songs of the wind. Villagers noticed that the wind had changed. It carried lullabies through the trees. Mothers sang them to their children, and sleep came easy. Some said Jorinda's songs had been gifted to the wind itself. Asterisk, the flower's legacy. The purple flower bloomed every spring near the forest's edge. None dared pluck it, but it was said that if a soul was truly lost, the flower would guide them home. It became a symbol of hope, of return, of unyielding love. Asterisk, and still they dream in the quiet hours of night, when the moon hangs low and stars drift lazily above. Some say they can still hear the soft voice of a girl singing. Willow weeps where dreams may stray. Sing me home by end of day. And far away, in a forest long softened by time, the last golden cage rests empty. The story of Jorinda and Jorinda, once tangled in sorrow, became a lullaby passed through generations. Story that sleeps gently in the heart, guiding dreamers safely home.